Yeah.
So beloved Baba says, this whole creation is the result of imagination, the outcome of the mind. It is the mind which binds you, and it is the mind which is also the means of your freedom. So we'll start with that. And thank you for coming. And this is one of my passions. Baba is my passion and the work is my passion. And so it's wonderful to be able to combine. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Byron Katie and about myself and how I came to the work and what the work is. And then I'm going to weave Baba's words on the mind, and I'm going to parallel then what Katie says and how it all dovetails. And then we're going to actually experience inquiry, because that's really important. I mean, I had a great intellectual understanding of the work. I read all of her books, but until I actually experienced doing the work, I did not have a clue. And it's not called the work for nothing. It is hard, because scientifically we're actually developing neural pathways into the right hemisphere of the brain, which gives us ability to see the bigger picture of life. And of course we're most blessed because we have Baba, and he's always our touchstone, and everything that we discover, he contains it all. And so there's no place that, we can go to the darkest depths and Baba's there. And we can go to the highest heights and Baba's there, and he's always there with us. And Katie discovered that there's only kindness even at the bottom of a dark hole. So my name is Ann Haug, and I'm from Montana, and so I had what I call a honeymoon with Baba from 2001, when he first grabbed me, to 2008, when my daughter was diagnosed with depression while at boarding school. My world bottomed out. I was severely depressed. I couldn't eat. I felt completely responsible. I felt like I was a complete failure. I lost my daughter. She was 16 at the time. And after that, in 2009, I came across the work. And I read all of her books, and then my husband got me to start going, and I got the training. And the next time I saw my daughter, about a year later, she had gone back to school and had had a rough time. But when I picked her up at the airport, I wasn't doing this, which was my way of trying to connect to her, because when she was a teenager, she had really shut me out. And I was quiet and peaceful. And she said, "Wow, Mom, you've really changed. You're so zen." Which was a high compliment, believe me. And ever since then, we've had this wonderful, loving connection. She just loves me for no reason, and I love her. Doesn't mean I condone all of her behavior. And this is what I'm going to share with you today, is a way to live that is so kind, and why and how we suffer when we believe our stressful thoughts. And it's this very simple process whereby we learn to identify what are we thinking and believing that's causing us the sorrow, the grief. And then we put it down on paper, and that slows the mind down. And then when we go through inquiry, which I will take you through step by step, you start to see a bigger picture, and nothing out there has to change. The world doesn't change. We change. We take the piece of lint off the lens of our mind, and we notice that the world is exactly as it needs to be. And of course, I have Baba quotes that say this very same thing. So here's one thing that Baba says: the mind rarely functions harmoniously because it is mostly guided and governed by forces in the subconscious. Few persons take the trouble to attain mastery over these hidden forces that direct the course of mental life. Modern psychology has done much to reveal the sources of conflict, but it has yet to discover methods of awakening inspiration or supplying the mind with something that makes life worth living. This indeed is the creative task facing the saviors of humanity. And of course, this these were Baba's words from many years ago, and I do believe that people like Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle and some others really are the ones who are bringing this process whereby we can be inspired, and not only can we analyze our problems, but we know we can work our way through them in a very step-by-step, methodical way. The reason that my title for this presentation is Meher Baba's Manonosh and the work of Byron Katie is because I realized a few years ago that Manonosh being the annihilation of the limited mind, I realized that's what the work does. It's this process that deconstructs the conditioned mind. And you can go as slow or as fast as you want. And I was going too fast when I found the work, and I was actually getting sick, So, Katie always says, be gentle with yourself. And so you just take your time, there's no hurry, and you just start noticing, what am I believing that's causing my problem? What am I believing? And most of these, we say are from childhood, and of course we know that it can be from embodiments. Like there's something wrong with me. That's a stressful thought, And I don't have enough handouts for everyone, so maybe we can share. These are Baba's words from Discourses. Thought has to be made use of in order to overcome the limitations set up by its own movement. But when this is done, it has itself to be given up. This amounts to the process of going beyond the mind, and this becomes possible through non-identification with the mind or its desires. So that's the most important thing that the work gives us. We learn to disidentify from our thoughts, okay? Just remember that. You are not your thoughts. Thought passes through, it just passes through. And when it's a stressful one, Katie says, imagine it as a little child coming by and just let it sit on your knee and tell you its problem. And once it's done that, it just runs off to play. So we don't repress or suppress because we are not our thoughts. And on top of that, we're not our emotions, we're not our physical sensations. And so that is the critical factor, and Baba has said it. So, non-identification with the mind or its desires. He says the mind becoming accustomed to certain habits of thought and response does not find it easy to adjust itself to these new claims of its own perceptions, owing to the inertia caused by impressions of previous modes of thought and conduct. So, for example, if we believe that the world is a dangerous place, okay? I used to believe that. What happens is there's a part of our brain that's more the reptilian survival mode, and it wants to keep its story together even though it's negative, because there's a security in the familiar, even when it's negative. And that's the way the brain works. And when we do the work, the world is a dangerous place. Is it true? There's 4 questions in the work. Is it true is the first question. And the work is meditation. We go inside and we allow our inner wisdom to bring up if it's true for us. And it's just a yes or a no, and there's no wrong answer. And what I love about the work is that it honors that each of us equally has that inner wisdom, and we can learn to trust it. For example, with my daughter, and with my son too, I believed it was my duty, to guide them, direct them, yada, yada. And once I started doing the work, I just let go. I just started trusting that they have the wisdom they need. And I noticed a funny thing. He started coming and asking me what I thought about, Mom, what do you think about this, So this is the most beautiful thing, is my world has changed because I've changed the way I view life. Nothing out there has to change. I mean, you have to experience it for yourself, but that's my experience. And, Katie always says, test it out for yourself and see if it's true. So the world is a dangerous place. Can you absolutely know that that's true? So if you said yes to the first question, is it true? Yes, it's true. And you can give a million examples of how the world is a dangerous place. Can you absolutely know that it's true? And again, I make my clients sit for 60 to 90 seconds. You just cannot answer it if you don't give yourself time. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. Then you go on to the third question. How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Now, this is the question that we really sit in for quite a while. This is where you notice what emotions you feel when you're believing the thought. Well, fear. If the world is dangerous, I'm definitely feeling fear. And I find with many clients, they've gotten to the place where they cannot even notice what they're feeling. So in the work, we do have to open up to these painful feelings. But what happens is the belief has only triggered what's already inside of us. And once we honor that there's fear inside, and we breathe with it, and we love it, love the fear, sit with it, something will shift in 60 to 90 seconds. Maybe an image will arise from when you were a child, and I know my dad always told me the world was a dangerous place, and I'll see an image. And then I'll write that down because that's something I might have to work on separately. So you notice in question 3, how do I react? The emotions, the images that arise, the physical sensations. How do you treat the world when you're believing that thought, that it's dangerous? Just go inside now and notice. If you're believing that the world is dangerous, or someone, that you can find somebody who you believe is dangerous, how do you treat them, even if only in your mind? Well, I notice that I forget to breathe, and I'm not really open to being in the present moment. My mind's just chattering away. Does anybody else have something? How do you notice how you treat the world? And you can just we can just do popcorns. If anybody has anything, you can just shout it out. How do you treat yourself when you believe the world is dangerous? How do you treat yourself? I get very, defending, shutting down, putting up my armor. Maybe I won't even go out. Maybe I'll just stay at home. Byron Katie was completely agoraphobic. I'm going to stop right here and tell you a little bit about Katie, and then I'll come back to question 4. She was an ordinary person. She was in her second marriage. She had 3 children. Katie was agoraphobic. She was a raging person. Her children were afraid of her. She was very successful in her business as a realtor. But toward the end, she wouldn't even leave her bedroom. She would just do her business on the bed. And finally, she checked herself into a halfway house. Her insurance would only allow her to check into a halfway house for eating disorders. And she was really overweight, too. But anyway, the women there were all afraid of her, so she slept in the attic. And she didn't even feel worthy to sleep on a bed, so she slept on the floor. And then one morning she woke up because a cockroach was walking across her leg. And she noticed that she just woke up in joy, pure joy. This was in 1986, and she's never left that state since. And that's when she slowly recognized, when I believe my thoughts, I suffer. When I don't believe them, I don't suffer. And it was as simple as that for her. And then it took her some years to kind of reintegrate into this world that we're all a part of, whereby she could share this process. She wasn't interested in telling about her experience of joy. She was interested in supporting people to have their own experience. And she says it's not called the work for nothing. It is hard work. I mean, I've struggled, and persevered because I was desperate. I was really desperate. And I felt always that Baba gave me the work as a bridge to him. And as I grew in this practice of the work, and I noticed that my relationships changed with my children, with my husband, I got out of his business, and we'll do a whole little thing on whose business we're in, because that's foundational to the work. Life has become so much kinder and sweeter, and I feel closer to Baba, I feel closer to myself, and I feel closer to everyone, because I actually do experience that we are all one. And all that's left is compassion. So we'll go back to question 4. Who would you be without the thought that the world is a dangerous place? Who or what would you be without that thought? I definitely can breathe more easily, and I do feel more peaceful. And one of the things that I love about question 4 is that it's where you can find proactive solutions for your life, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So then we move on to the turnarounds. Okay. The world is a dangerous place. So the first turnaround, and those of you that have the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, if you look at the very bottom of it, on the right, you can share with your neighbor, it gives you the turnarounds. And it also gives you the 4 questions on the left.
If people will just take a picture of it with their phone, if that's where they're living, you can have your
Perfect.
own copy.
Yes. And actually, see, I'm not very techie, but people have, the work has an app, and so you can actually do it on your phone. There's many free resources on thework.com that you can download. All these worksheets and many more are just available for you. And we also have a 24/7 Do the Work helpline that we all volunteer on. And so that's also a free resource that's available. It's not like having a full-on session, but it's enough to get you going, because it's a little bit difficult at first. There's like some little things that you have to practice to work it out, and we'll be doing that here today. But I always notice you get out of it as much as you put into it, and that's true with anything in life. So, if this is something that resonates for you, then you just spend some time with it, and then you feel the results. Let's see, where was I?
Turn the thought around.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So, when you turn it to yourself, it would be, I am dangerous. The world is dangerous. I am dangerous. And then you have to find 3 genuine, specific examples where that is true. Okay? So, I am dangerous. Yes. When I'm believing my stressful thoughts, especially that the world is dangerous, I can become very mean and very armored and unkind. Okay? I just noticed that this is how it works. And I could say unkind words to someone. It might even just be a clerk in a store where I'm just not present. And I'm like, who are they, They're not important. And then we can't do all the turnarounds on this one, but we will do another example where you can get all the turnarounds. So then we'll do the turnaround to the opposite. So the world is not a dangerous place. That's one turnaround to the opposite. And then you could do, the world is a kind place or a safe place. And you can find examples. You always have to find genuine examples, because when you do find the examples, that's your prescription for happiness. So for example, the world is a safe place. I've noticed as I've questioned my stressful thoughts, I see so much kindness because everything's a mirror. This world is a mirror. This world is a dream that we're waking up from. Baba tells us that, right? So whatever is triggering us, whatever judgment we have about anyone, it's a reflection of something that we haven't seen in ourselves. We can't see ourselves clearly. That's why we projected the world in the first place, so that we could become one with God, become God. So if I look at someone, for example, my sister, who irritated me, and as I really deeply got into the work, I started seeing all her wonderful qualities, and I started commenting on them to her. And it's like my heart just opened more. And I still see the things that I don't like, but you know, it all just becomes compassion. We're all wounded. I always tell my clients, I'm wounded, you know, it's like Leonard Cohen says, that's where the light comes through. There's nothing wrong. We're in the human condition. We're wounded. You know, yay. I can understand your suffering because I know what suffering is. So with my sister, I'm thinking about her, and I'm thinking about how to make her happy. No, there's Baba. Real happiness lies in making others happy. Oh my God, it's so true. Now my husband's not a Baba lover, nor are my children, but you know, I've got that poster in my pantry with Baba just beaming out in his pinkness. Real happiness lies in making others happy. And I've noticed they've never complained about that. Because, you know, hey, I'm a better person. I'm like trying to think about how to make them happy. But I don't leave myself to do that, okay? And that's really important. I don't need myself. I don't leave myself. I don't leave myself. You know, caregivers and people in those professions get burned out oftentimes because they leave themselves. And that's not what Baba wants. And it doesn't work. It's called burnout. So, and I think before I had the work, I didn't fully understand real happiness lies in making others happy because I still would leave myself to make somebody happy. I wasn't true to myself. But now, I've found a way to always stay in myself. So, one of the major premises of the work is there's 3 kinds of business. There's my business, there's your business, and there's God's business. And every time we go out of our own business, we suffer. And I have found it to be true. And if I'm not happy, if I'm suffering, whose business am I in right now? Oftentimes I'm in God's business. So that's one of the foundational pieces of the work. And the other one is, and this goes back to real happiness, lies in making others happiness, lies in making others happy. If you seek love, approval, and appreciation outside of yourself, you suffer, okay? When I'm happy, I just love you because we are love. That is our true nature. And I know you're love, and I know I'm love. And Katie says, I know everybody loves me, they just haven't realized it yet. You know? It's not personal. It's just not personal. And I mean, if you can just take that away with you, that's enough. You know, it's never personal. We're all wounded. You know, with Baba, we know our history going through evolution and going through the animal kingdom and all these sanskaras of anger and lust and greed. You know, this is evolution. And now we've reached this full consciousness. And we're burdened with this, right? And so what I love about the work is it just reminds me, oh, I can catch that thought. Whatever I'm believing in the moment, is it true? And it does become a habit, because as you question your thoughts and you do this work, the neural pathways actually develop new grooves, and the old ones, they just don't get used, and so they just wear away. And this is actually in Katie's seminal work called Loving What Is. She calls it the textbook for the work. And in the preface, it talks about neuroscientists at Stanford who studied the work specifically, and they found it to be the most effective cognitive therapy. And they're the ones who talked about how the pathways get developed. And so as you keep doing that, it just gets easier. You always see a bigger picture. And of course that brings us closer to Baba, because non-duality is beyond the mind. The mind cannot grasp it. Baba, the highest of the high, the lowest of the low. No, my mind can't grasp that. But you can actually start living more and more in that place of what I like to call pure existence. Underneath all sorrow, all worries, there is pure existence. And it's something that can become more and more palpable. You know. And we are so blessed with Baba. And I have to share more quotes, and then we're going to just weave back into the work. This is a good one. I mean, Baba had this whole thing laid out. It's just incredible. Between the two extremes of a life harassed by wants and a life completely free from wants, it is possible to arrive at a mode of practical life in which there is harmony between the mind and the heart. When there is such harmony, the mind does not dictate the ends of life, but only helps to realize those ends that are given by the heart. It does not lay down any conditions to be fulfilled before an utterance of the heart is adopted for translation into practical life. In other words, the mind surrenders its role of judge. Oh my goodness. The mind surrenders its role of judge. And don't beat yourself up when you watch your mind judging. Let it judge. It's okay. Get it down on paper, and your mind is going to slow down. It's just going to work through it, and it changes everything. So the mind surrenders its role of judge, which it is accustomed to play in its intellectual queries concerning the nature of the universe, and accepts unquestioningly the dictates of the heart. Byron Katie says, the questioned mind drops into its sweet home in the heart. The questioned mind drops into its sweet home in the heart. So I found that I can live in my heart more and more as I question these stressful thoughts. Nothing out there has to change. It's a losing game to change the world. You know, I spent 20 years in an intentional spiritual community working night and day and just loving God, you know. And I was young, thankfully. But it wore me out. It's like, no, forget it. This is the dual realm that we're in. This is the realm of lightness and dark. And it will always be that way. So Katie says, if you want to stop war, just stop the war in yourself. And I think even the Bhagavad Gita says, that takes more, courage than conquering nations. Can I just stop the internal war? This is the place. And it's no small thing. It's no small thing. And, like I say, Baba is always here for us. We might go through the valley of the shadow of death, and I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. It's true. Just test it. Don't believe your thoughts, because man, they're going to come. Okay. I'm trying to remember. Okay, so we surrender the role of judge. The mind surrenders the role of judge. So Baba says divine love arises after the disappearance of the individual mind. So we're not going to lose our mind completely. We're going to be in the universal mind. You know, we're going to be able to just be in that beautiful state more and more of being one with God. Well, one thing I want to say is the real marriage is to yourself. The real marriage is to yourself, and every other relationship is an add-on. And if you think your partner is going to give you what you want, just forget it. Just give it to yourself. Take out the middleman and give it to yourself. It's a really nice way to live. If I want flowers, man, I'm going to go get them because I know the kind I like. And all my relationships are much better when I'm not looking for love, approval, and appreciation outside of myself. It's a really mature way to live. Okay? This is like two mature people just enjoying each other's company, but not getting completed by the other person. You know? So if you're really brave, you know, you can just stick it out with your partner and go all the way to freedom. Because they will show you everything you don't want to see about yourself. And that doesn't mean all relationships are meant to be, you know, meant to endure. You know, and I'm sure everyone here realizes that. I mean, we want a balance of the mind and heart. And that's always just so important. So who would you be without the thought that they're judging you? Who are you without that thought? Just sit in that for a minute. Who or what are you without the thought that they're judging you? I feel compassion. Freedom.
Pervasive.
Pervasive. Yeah.
Peaceful and content.
Peaceful, content. What did you say?
Courageous.
Courageous. Yeah. It takes courage to do this work. It's you know, I just see the mind as like, maybe that's the last frontier. I don't know. You know? Yeah. So without the thought, peace, kindness, creative. Yes. And what I love in question 4, who would you be without that thought? That's also where you find your proactive solutions. You know, like you might be someone who could talk to that person and just reach out to them and get a sense of maybe why am I seeing it this way? And oftentimes it's the case that they're so happy that you've shown interest, even though you thought they were judging you, you know? When you really show interest in somebody else, you know, that's something we all like. You know, it feels good. It feels really good, you know? And it's fun. It's a fun way to live. Okay, so let's turn the thought around to ourselves. People are judging me. I am judging me. In this situation, because each of you have a particular individual that you're thinking of, in that situation, find where you're judging yourself. The more genuine and specific it is, the better it is for your inquiry, for your awakening. Well, I'm noticing that in this situation that I'm thinking about, I'm actually feeling like there is something wrong with me. So I'm judging me. I'm feeling less than. I'm wondering. I'm doubting myself. We really don't know what other people are thinking. We might think we do. I don't know if you saw in the universal beliefs, I feel your energy. That's like a belief, but come on, let's just stay in our own business, you know?
I'm already feeling layers. Like
Yeah.
I started with one thing, and then it shifted into another layer, and I'm trying to do
Beautiful.
both. Now, should I stick with the first one or go to the
So
second
here's
one?
what we do. Did you hear what she said?
No.
She
No.
said it's layering. She's got two things going on now, and
Like it
she's,
started off with a friend, and then it
Yes.
shifted to my father, and
Yes.
it's like, okay, where do I go?
and that is how the work works. So what we do is you write down the thing about your father, and then you do a separate inquiry on your father. Because it often happens that other images will arise, other pieces of the work, because it is layers. It's absolutely layers. And I will tell you that in your current life, whatever is in your field that's triggering you, it's there for you. It's like it's a gift because there's something there's always something underneath it. And it will usually have to do with father, mother, you know. It's like Katie says, if you want to get the job done, do the work on father, mother. I did the work on my father so many times. My mother was like a saint, and I could never think of anything to judge her on. But my father was very charming, artistic, but temperamental, you know. And I just did so many layers of work on him. And at the very end, and this is after they passed on. It doesn't matter if they're dead or alive, believe me, because nobody's dead. I just had this incredible heart opening with my father where I just loved him. And I also saw that he's just my mirror. I mean, everything I didn't like about him, I could find in myself. But it just, like it's done. It's over. And then with my mother, I thought, you know, there has to be something. And it took me some years, and I finally judged her on, she didn't, let me get this right. She didn't fulfill her creative potential. My mother didn't fulfill her creative potential. She was a beautiful soul. But you know, there was a little bit of melancholy, and so what was so common with our parents' generation, where she subsumed her own desires, you know, to take care of the family, and just kind of gave up on individuating and fully being who she is. And it was like, oh yeah, that would be me. You know? I wasn't fulfilling my creative potential, and you know, I feel like Baba gave me the work because it's perfect for me. I adore it. I love sharing it. It changed my life. So this is what I do, you know, to fulfill my creative potential, is I like to share the work. But I mean, it took me years to figure that out about my mom. But you see, she was my mirror. I mean, she was a wonderful mother, and I loved her, and I love her very much. But, you know, sometimes you have to wait and be patient and contemplate, and it will come. When you're ready, that will arise. Yeah. Okay, so now you know what to do. Write it down, because those are so important. And this is really learning to trust your inner wisdom, your inner guidance, your inner Baba, whatever you want to call it. It's just waiting. It's just waiting for us, you know? Okay, so we're on the turnaround. I think we left off at the turnaround to ourself. So I am judging me. And did everybody find examples? Could you find where you were judging yourself? Okay, now gets juicy. The turnaround to the other. They are judging me. I am judging them. Now this one can be very difficult. I literally had to spend a week when I was in training in this class with my mentor. I was doing the work on that sister, and it was like whatever I was judging her on, you know, I couldn't find it. I don't do that, you know, no. I mean, I got other issues, but not that, whatever it was. I sat with it for a week, whatever it was. I just kept contemplating, and all of a sudden, it was almost like I could feel those neural pathways just sparking and opening up. And my mentor was in Ireland. She was teaching from Ireland. And I told her, I got it. And she said, yeah, I could feel it all the way across the Atlantic, I mean, that's how powerful it is. It's like, that was what helped me love my sister completely. I love her quirks. I love her weaknesses. I love the things that she is so accomplished at. Things that I really admire about her. And now I can tell her the things I love. And I just couldn't go there before. I mean, these karmic things with our family can just be so deep. But with Baba, it's like, I'm in a hurry. I want to be free. And if that means loving my family like to pieces, I'm going to do it. I mean, that's kind of selfish, but that's enlightened self-interest, right? It's like priming the pump, I'm just going to act like I'm really loving, and pretty soon I'm feeling it. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to look for those examples. I am judging them. So I want you to find those examples now. I am judging them. Did everybody find it? It's not hard, is it? Okay, now we're going to do the turnaround to the opposite. So the turnaround to the opposite can be done several ways. They are not judging me. That's an obvious one. What would be an opposite word to judging? Accepting. They are accepting me. So don't force yourself into, and I've seen this happen so much in the work where it becomes almost a game to see how many turnarounds you can find. Don't go there. Just do the ones that feel useful. So whatever works for you, they are not judging me or they are accepting me. So now find those 3 examples where that could be as true or truer than the original statement. And oftentimes in the turnaround to the opposite, it's like, I don't know. How could I possibly know? And that's an example. I couldn't possibly know what they're doing.
So if we really feel like they really were judging us, like we really felt it at the time and still feel it now.
Yeah.
So turning it around to they weren't judging us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I felt like I was being judged because I felt like I didn't do the job that I was supposed to be doing. I let myself down.
You felt that way, so you had to
I was
judge
pretty
yourself.
sure that I did not do, I mean,
Okay.
I felt like I was judging myself
Yes.
harshly.
Yes.
Harshly. And so the person that had set this whole thing up, I felt like I really had let her down and that she was judging my incompetence, right?
Okay.
So when I go to this, that she wasn't judging me, I'm thinking, I was judging myself. How could she not have been judging me too? Because
So here's
Does that
the
make
thing.
sense?
So here's the thing. You can just find one thing that she's not judging you on. It doesn't have to be the whole big picture, but can you just find one little example of what she wasn't judging you on? Like,
You showed up on.
it's a little window.
I showed up.
Yeah, I mean, this is how we do the
And I
work.
was wearing clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously. This is the way the work works. And this is where we get the neural pathways perking up
Just
here.
one little thing.
Well, and then, Katie says do 3. She goes, if you can find one example, you can find 2. If you can find 2, you can find 3. Because in the beginning, it's very difficult. But you are developing those pathways, and it does become much easier. But you just have to be patient. But you come to see it. And the other thing is that you felt also that you weren't up to the task. You didn't do it the way you wanted to do this particular thing.
I was prepared, but it wasn't, you're right, so
Yeah.
it wasn't as
Yeah.
it could have been.
Yeah, and so in the work, we also make amends. Like, we can go to someone and say, I feel like I didn't do this job up to my best ability, and I'm sorry. And then, maybe you know how to amend it, or you can ask somebody. And I've learned how to do that. And I believe that that's also what they do in 12-step programs. I haven't studied it myself, but I know the work has been compared to 12-step programs, among other things, Buddhism and things. So just be gentle with it, and if you can't find examples in the beginning, don't worry about it, because it will get easier. Because what it is, so this is another thing Katie says that is really a mind twister. Victims are the most violent people. Man, I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? But I've come to see that it's true. As long as we feel like a victim, we're perpetuating violence on ourselves first and foremost. Beating ourselves up mercilessly. I mean, this is an extreme example, but Katie has done the work with Holocaust survivors who are still suffering 60 years, and more. And then she tells them, so yes, it happened, and it was terrible, and you're still there living it all these years later. We have to learn to let these things go. Otherwise, it's so easy to take on the persona of being a victim, and I see it all the time. But it's violent.
And I would think that, especially that extreme example, if you're doing the work with someone, you would have to really somehow acknowledge the horror
Yes.
that they've been through before you could even begin to ask them.
You do.
Because they have to know, trust you, that
Would you
have a
repeat what
small
you said?
glimpse into the horror they've been through.
Yeah, so Damien was just saying, when you're working with someone in such a serious situation, you do need to acknowledge the suffering and the horror of that experience of being in a concentration camp. Yes. And also with other horrors like a rape. Yes, you do acknowledge it. And Katie herself was raped as a child, and I've seen her do the work on it. And you come to the place where nothing can ever violate you. We are pure and whole and free. And that is a huge thing to recognize. And it takes deep, deep work and sorrow. It's like honoring and grieving. We do have to grieve the wounds, the horrors that we've all experienced in so many lifetimes. And that's absolutely true. And thank you for bringing that up, Damien. Yes?
So this is very intrapsychic kind of work here.
Okay, wonderful question, and thank you. Did everybody hear the question?
Can you
Okay.
summarize it a bit?
So when in this situation, he's in a working relationship, and there really does need to be a dialogue about what went on. It needs to be resolved because things happened that weren't correct in that environment. And this could be true even in a family situation too. So the book Loving What Is goes into detail in how to give an honest no. And it's very difficult work to learn to give an honest no. And it's something we practice in the 9-day school for the work. And that's kind of what you're bringing up. So it's boundaries. It's very clear boundaries. And Katie says an honest no is like a kiss rather than a slap. So if something's not right for you, and you need to be really clear with that person, and in your situation, it's that the work was done inappropriately.
It's the perception that this person had of me
Okay.
had distortions in it.
Yes.
It's not that it wasn't totally inaccurate, but it had distortions
Yes.
in it that I could see, and there was
Yes.
a need to at least express that to the point that either this person understood those distortions, or I had a different understanding about how, but
Yeah.
there had to be dialogue
Yeah.
to get to a point where we were going to be able to collaborate going
Yeah,
forward.
and absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Dialogue is so valuable, and the main thing is to stay in your own business, and then notice if the other person gets upset or angry. That's not really your problem, that's their problem. And so you don't engage. And so by practicing staying with yourself, and of course we're so fortunate because we can see Baba in our hearts, and we are constantly taking his name and asking his guidance, which is a great support. But that's very much about the boundaries, an honest no. And I've practiced it, and people don't like it, that's their business. They don't have to like when I say no, but I'm very clear about it. I mean, there's some clients that I say no to. No, I cannot work with you, because they don't want to do the work, You really have to want to be free and get over being a victim, if you want to grow in this way. It's, and you can take it slow and easy, and I highly recommend it. Like I said, I was trying to go too fast and getting sick, and so it's all about balance. And Katie always says, just take one step at a time, just one baby step. And even in my everyday life, when I feel a little overwhelmed, like there's too much going on, I just breathe, take a breath. I look around and I'm like, oh, I can do the dishes. And like doing the dishes is like the most wonderful thing on the earth. And that's how I live now. Oh, my house is really dirty. I'm going to clean it. And it's a meditation. Life becomes a meditation. And it's really practical and obvious. And somebody crosses my path, well, obviously, that's the person I'm meeting. And it's just like, God's running the show. And I'm just playing my role. And, when I'm in that flow, it's magic. It's pure magic. So this is where Meher Baba's talking about the work as meditation. He said, in ordinary thinking, the uninterrupted flow of relevant trains of ideas is common. But when the mind sets itself to systematic meditation, there is inevitably a reactionary tendency for irrelevant and contrary thoughts to emerge and create disturbances. This is the law of the mind, and the aspirant should not be upset by the appearance in the consciousness of many contrary and unwholesome thoughts that had hitherto never made their appearance. Meditation involves bringing the subconscious contents of the mind to the forefront of consciousness. So I'm going to stop on that one, but I cannot stress enough the importance of disidentifying from thoughts. You are not your thoughts, you're the witness. Because believe me, horrendous thoughts will come. And you're going to learn to just let them go by. Just let them go by. And if there's a judgment, write it down and question it. And they're just clouds passing in the sky. Okay? And to acquire control over thoughts is to become fully conscious of what they are. They have to be attended to before they are controlled. This is Baba packing. We're unpacking these little atomic bombs of truth and love. And then he goes on to say, in ordinary introspection, it is seldom possible for the beginner to devote adequate attention to all the shadowy thoughts that pass through the mind. It is helpful, therefore, for the aspirant occasionally to write down his thoughts as they come and inspect them carefully at leisure. This process is different from writing planned essays. Thoughts are allowed to arise without any direction or restraint, so that even repressed elements from the subconscious mind have access to the conscious mind. So this is the work. This is the work. Bob has given this all to us. The entire advance from the very beginning consists in gradually curtailing and transcending the working of the individual mind. The mind is functioning even in the body state and in the energy state. In the body state, the mind thinks in terms of the body. In the energy state, it thinks in terms of energy. While in the mind state, it thinks in its own terms. However, even when the mind thinks in its own terms, it does not attain knowledge and realization of the infinite, because it becomes its own veil between thought and truth. Though the mind may be unencumbered by life in the body state or the energy state, it is still limited by separative consciousness. It might be compared to a mirror that is covered by dust. And that's exactly what Katie says. She says the mind is a projector, and we're getting the dust off the lens of the projector. The mind projects the world, and Baba says the mind is the mirror covered by dust. The mind has therefore to be completely merged and dissolved in the infinite before it is possible to experience the God state of nirvikalpa samadhi. Form is solidified energy. Energy is an expression of mind. Mind is the covered mirror of eternity. And eternity is truth that is thrown off the mask of the mind. And this is what we have with the work, this systematic process that we can very methodically cleanse away these separative thoughts that keep us from experiencing the bliss that is our birthright. To discard the limiting mind is no easy thing. The chief difficulty is that the mind has to be annihilated through the mind itself. Intense longing for union with the infinite reality, as well as infinite patience, are indispensable in the process of transcending the mind. So please remember, we're all in this together, and it is hard work. But you are so fortunate to have your community here, you know? If I was jealous, I'd be a little bit jealous. But I'm just so grateful that I get to be here now and share this beautiful gift that Baba has given me. Truly, I was in the pits of despair, and this work came to me, and so it's my greatest joy, you know, to just share this. So this will be the last, I think. Yep. The suffering that comes from purging the mind of its many desires exists, even when the soul may be ready to renounce them, because this decision of the soul goes counter to the inclination of the ego mind to persist through its habitual desires. Renunciation of desires curtails the very life of the ego mind.